Buenos días. Pues bueno, vamos a comenzar en el marco de la estancia de la doctora PAvlina McGrady. Será este espacio para profesores. La doctora va a platicar sobre sus investigaciones sobre el turismo accesible. Aquí tenemos a dos chicas que nos van a ayudar a traducir si es en caso necesario. Y pues sean bienvenidos. El doctor Martín Pantoja es el anfitrión en esta ocasión de nuestra invitada especial.
Muchas gracias. Pues buenos días. Thank you everybody for being here. Good morning. So we are introducing our special guest, Dr. PAvlina McGrady from Southern Oregon University. Welcome to the Universidad de Guanajuato. Vamos a damos la bienvenida a nuestra invitada especial y vamos a continuar de manera muy rápida, pero hoy nos acompaña el director del Departamento de Gestión y Dirección de Empresas, el doctor Fabián Gutiérrez, quien hará la bienvenida.
Muchas gracias a todos. La intención es tener esa charla con la doctora PAvlina. Ella viene de la Universidad del Sur de Oregon. Ya vamos a cumplir 55 años de estrecha relación con esta universidad. Lo importante es que ustedes en este evento pues fortalezcamos la parte de los proyectos de investigación. Es decir, si tenemos alguna línea de investigación en el área de sostenibilidad, pues aprovechar y establecer el contacto con la doctora para futuros proyectos. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos.
Muchísimas gracias al director. Para no tomar mucho tiempo, dejarlo a la doctora, leeré su currículum de manera resumida porque es muy extenso. Y lo haré en español porque la doctora entiende un poquito de español, así que lo conoce. Ella es profesora asociado de la Escuela de Negocios de Southern Oregon University en los Estados Unidos. Enseña cursos de licenciatura y de posgrado. Tiene un doctorado en la dimensión humana de los recursos naturales de la Universidad de Colorado Estatal. Tiene un grado de maestría de industria del viaje, administración de la industria del viaje de la Universidad de Hawái en Manoa. Además, enseña sustentabilidad corporativa y administración turística. Se especializa en sustentabilidad corporativa y liderazgo sustentable. Además, su investigación es enfocada en el tema que ella maneja, Sustainable Tourism o turismo sustentable y turismo accesible. Está participando en diversos proyectos enfocados a identificar los obstáculos que encuentra el turismo y que desde una perspectiva de negocios investiga las oportunidades y los retos, sobre todo ha tenido un proyecto en lo que son vehículos eléctricos. Ha publicado en muchas revistas, pero escogí tres de las principales: el Journal of Management and Sustainability, the International Journal of Innovation and Sustainable Development y Tourism Review International. Pues damos la bienvenida. Thank you very much for being here and sharing your expertise with us. And as the relationship between Oregon and Guanajuato is not only the universities, but it's also the cities, sister cities. That's why this topic is a very important issue to start reflection and to start debate on how to manage in this city, for example, to cope with these very well-intentioned initiatives. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Buenos días a todos.
Buenos días.
Thank you so much for having me here. Such a pleasure, everybody so welcoming. First time in Guanajuato, first time in Mexico. Very, very warm people, great community. The topic today is challenges and opportunities for accessible and inclusive tourism. And I'll just note that this is supported through a grant from Travel Oregon, which is the destination management organization in charge of tourism in the state. And then Travel Southern Oregon is the regional destination management organization. And then we have the Institute for Applied Sustainability at Southern Oregon University, which has also helped for this research. So the topics today, I will provide a little bit of background on accessible tourism, and then some research highlights, and then talk about best practices in accessible tourism. I guess, should I pause?
We're going to do like summary translation. Go ahead.
Okay, just really quickly, where Oregon is, for anybody who doesn't know, right north of California. And then Ashland is on the very southern border. Here, this is California starting, so we're very close to California. And a little background on Ashland, what are some of the activities in terms of tourism that are available? We do have theater, you can see here some pictures, and then Universidad de Guanajuato for our sistership. And then we do have a ski resort, just 30 minutes away from the town. And then we do have a lot of mountain biking, rafting, and a lot of wineries. And so, running, hiking, things like that. Just when we think about accessible tourism, you know, we can just start thinking that a lot of those activities are very difficult for people with mobility impairments, specifically rafting, skiing, running, biking, and all of that. So innately, the way our town is, as is Guanajuato, is not very friendly in terms of for people with mobility impairments, but also there's opportunities. Now talk about that. Okay, in terms of background, maybe some of you know that the global population with some form of disability is getting higher and higher numbers, about 16% more recent data from this year. About 1.3 billion people live with some form of disability. So it's a very large group, and as the population is aging, as we all know, the projection is that the number of people with disability will continue rising, unfortunately. And that is challenging, but also offers opportunities that we have to think about. So accessible tourism, this term is relatively new. We talk about people with disabilities, and we talk about people of different abilities. You know, there's different terms, how to be more inclusive. Accessible is defined by the United Nations for the ongoing endeavor to ensure tourist destinations, products, and services are accessible to all people, regardless of their physical limitation, disability, age, etc. And this is a little bit overlapping with inclusive tourism. You know, we have talked about equity, diversity, and inclusion, making our products, services, offerings available for everybody, you know, equally. But when we talk about people with disability, we usually see this symbol here, right? But it's important to think about broadly that we're not only talking and thinking about people in wheelchairs with mobility impairments, but also cognitive, hearing, and visual impairments. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people with those disabilities, and the number is growing besides mobility impairments. And who is benefiting of this change towards accessibility are, when we talk about mainly for visitors from a tourism perspective, physical, sensory, and intellectual disabilities. But then other population groups, when we're making changes, they will affect the local residents who live in our areas who have some impairments, elderly people, foreigners, we'll talk about language and other things, people with strollers, with babies, and or, you know, I broke my leg and I have a little scooter or cane or something. Carrying large items, if you have a big luggage, if there's a ramp, it's helpful, right? Not only for a wheelchair, for everybody, for young children. If you have visuals lower on the wall for people in wheelchairs, well, that's helpful for smaller people or younger children as well. So it is beneficial for everybody when we think about those changes. I have a couple of slides to just highlight some research as kind of background. MNG, White Travel Intelligence, is an organization that does studies on people with disabilities, and they did this study in 2022, so it's a little bit outdated. But just to summarize, disabled travelers took 3.5, and this is in the US, I think it is, yeah, 3,000 people they surveyed. They took 3.4 trips in the last year, and again, this is 2022, maybe still recovering from COVID. They spent over $3,000, and it adds up to $58 billion. So we have this perception that people with disabilities don't travel or don't have money, but that's inaccurate. And I think this is reflective broadly, not only in the US.
Pequeño zoom.
Okay. You need translation? Okay. Okay. And this study highlighted what a person with disability is looking for when traveling. Being treated with kindness and respect is the number one. 53% talk about that. What does that mean as a person managing a business or a town? It means that you have to train the individuals to how to treat everybody with kindness and prepare for people with disabilities. Staff understands my need, kind of overlapping in that, and want more access information on the website. I'll come back to that, very, very important. And then, again, accessibility questions, information on the website. So the two big themes that we see are training for people who are working with a kind of front desk, have contact with guests or residents, and then information. I'll come back to that shortly. The study also asked what do people look on a holiday, and as probably many of us do, beach holiday is the number one. We all want to go to the beach during vacation, right? And so do people with disabilities. Cruise, city break, holiday park, etc. Well, when we think about going to the beach, let's think about people in a wheelchair. It's not very easy, right? Well, there are solutions, and a lot of destinations are starting to adopt those. This here on the left, it's called MobiMat. A lot of places on the Oregon coast actually have gotten those. They're kind of like a metal material, and you can fold it out and roll it during the winter. And then people can get all the way to the beach, you know, if it's sand or rock or whatnot. This is another type of beach chair. These are called David's chair, and actually they're a local company in Oregon that makes these chairs that really can go anywhere, even if you want to go hiking, you know, beach, kind of any, they're like hanks almost. You can go to any ground. And then this is a picture from Greece. I think in 2022, I believe, they kind of made a commitment that made almost all the beaches in Greece added this kind of device that can take people in wheelchairs all the way to the water and out, and it has a shower here as well. So obviously it costs money, but there are things that are available to help people get their most wanted destination, go to the beach. What makes a city accessible? So a wide variety of accessible accommodation. Obviously, when we travel somewhere, we have to stay in a hotel or a house or something, and if that's not accessible, obviously you probably won't go to that destination. And then you can see accommodation is close to cultural attraction, information is easily available. Again, museums, other cultural attractions have good accessibility support, accessible public transport links. So information is easily accessible. Again, I'll come back to that over and over. But then we see kind of transportation as well. If you're not renting a car, when you go to the hotel or Airbnb or wherever you're staying, how would you get to the museum or theater or beach or wherever that transportation link is usually missing in most cities. And it's very important. And again, what I highlighted in the beginning, what are people with disabilities looking is staff kind of being kind and welcoming, as should be to anybody else, and also website has information, accessible information. So I'll give you more details on that. So this is the brief overview, just to lay a foundation for accessible tourism. Maybe I'll pause here for a moment before I go to the research that I have done. Any questions or anything?
Yeah, just it's a kind of strange question. Because how do you think that for them, for example, their disability is changing where they want to go?
It is a very, very big factor, I would say, because there's very few destinations in the world that are considered accessible.
Yeah, but I mean, when we question them, where you want to go to holiday, and they say beach, I think that, for example, they are not mentioning tourism adventure because they like think, okay, I'm not going there because I can't. So they are already like incorporating their disability inside of where they are thinking about going.
Well, a lot of these destinations are trying to change to become accommodating. So
yeah, but that's why I think they think the beach is easier. Because I mean, you have a photograph there of someone in the beach doing an adventure stuff. And of course, I mean, there must be these kind of places that actually offer this accessibility to disabled people to do adventure stuff, but perhaps they don't realize that. I mean, for example, you can do bungee jumping.
right, you can do everything.
But I mean, it would be like you were thinking yourself that I won't do that because I have problems.
Okay, so you're saying that they choose beach because it's somewhat easier.
Yeah, and they already know that there's dumb stuff in that area.
Okay. I mean, I think most of us like to go to the beach.
Yeah,
You know, that's
no,
part
that's
of vacation,
undeniable,
right? So
undeniable.
I think it's just saying that if people with disabilities
Now,
are saying
the second one was cruise.
right, yeah.
And I think cruise is not so popular between non-disabled people. And I think that the cruise is second because they know that actually many times in the cruises it's easier for them.
Yeah, it's a little safer, you can know, which goes back to that information. Probably when you go to a cruise, you know, there's a description of what is there, right? Very detailed. That's the main kind of gap that I think we can easily address. What is it that you're getting to? If you're a hotel owner, it doesn't mean that you have to be, you know, accessible, have lifts, ramps.
No,
It
but
means
good
that you just
information.
provide the information. What am I expecting when I'm going there? How wide it is, how tall is it? You know, what's the ground like, so that I can determine for myself, is that something I can do or not?
And then one of the things that I think we have as a problem here is the public transport. Because I mean, we don't have any kind of transport that actually is any friendly with anyone with moving disabilities. I mean, for example, here in the fair we have ramps and we have elevators and this kind of thing. But if you're a student with disabled mobility, how would you get here? Because I mean, the buses are not good at all. And for example, I mean, Europe has all the buses already established for that. The US has already done that work. And that would be something that we need to, first we need to change, but then we need to inform people about it. And that's a question that also, and I'm not sure if it's mentioned there, the accessibility, I mean the accessibility of the municipality, how much information there is about how good it is to move inside the municipality, not just the hotel and those kind of things.
That's the biggest challenge, yeah. Going from place to place, you may go to the hotel, but then what do you do from there?
Yeah, exactly. And that is the thing, I think we need to work on that because we have very bad accessibility here in Guanajuato. But then to inform about, oh, we already do have that, because that can then attract some students that, okay, I know that the hotel is accessible, the beach is accessible, but also I have public transport or cabs that are good for disabled people, those kinds of things.
There are in some cities where they don't have accessible public transportation. They have started like a small shuttle that goes, it's funded through non-profits, through, you know, different methods, but you know, a small shuttle for maybe 10 people that goes around, and it can be upon request available, things like that, to start somewhere, to have something, and then maybe work bigger to add a bus that, you know, comes every hour or something like that.
Yeah, I think that what Larry is talking about makes me think, I'm not from the tourism area, but from the management perspective, I would say, I was talking to Rafael, all of this, especially for Guanajuato City, which is a big challenge, really needs the involvement of the municipality government, you know?
Yep.
And of course restaurants and hotels and everything, but if you don't have any strategy, even for the university, you don't have any strategy with the city, with the, it really needs a commitment and leadership from the city.
Yeah, I'll touch on that because we can't, I survey businesses, but you can't put it on the business. They don't have the money to make the changes. They have to get help. Yeah, definitely.
I'm just curious about the results that you shared us, because at the beginning you mentioned that inclusive tourism involved different kind of disabilities, not just those who are on wheelchairs.
Right.
You've mentioned cognitive, deaf, blind,
Yeah.
etc. However, I'm curious to first of all to find out whether the survey you applied was oriented to all kinds of disabled people.
Yeah, I'll share.
And then for some reasons, all the examples you showed as a answer to this need of the market, the 100% of the examples you shared to us was for people with disabled mobility, those who are on wheelchairs. So have you identified whether this is a response to the companies because it's more visible that doing these kind of adjustments rather those for cognitive disabilities, or is it like a strategy? Is it just, or was it just coincidence that these examples you showed us was just oriented? So, well, because I wonder if some adjustment for disabled tourism for cognitive person with some disability, or cognitive disability, or all this death or blindness, showed some adjustment that are very visible to all of us. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I'm going to share the research. This is just the foundation from this study focused on Canadian mobility impairments. And as we all think about people with disability, was the first thing that comes to mind, a person in a wheelchair, right? But that's part of the problem, that we have to change our thinking that disability is such a wide range. Yes, many people have mobility impairments, not only wheelchair, but older, with a walker, with a cane, and things like that. But yeah, I will share some kind of examples with hearing and visual impairments, and our study focused on all of them. But that's the problem with business, that people are like, oh, I can't have an elevator, I have a heel, so I can't do anything. Yeah, maybe you can't do anything for that, but you can focus on people with visual, hearing, cognitive. Unfortunately, children especially in the last few years is really, people with autism or things like ADHD and things like that.
In my opinion, language is also, when we travel, and I go to a country where they speak something but not English, that's a disability to me.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I touch on the language too. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question from Dr. Arias. He has a question about whether there's a difference between like regular tourism in the US and something in Mexico that has been like a common thing, which is a popular tourism for lower income folks. Is there something similar in the US? Is that something that companies are targeting to, or just like people who can afford a $3,000 trip per year, like per trip?
Yeah, well, that's touching on the all-inclusive, right?
Yeah.
Inclusive for everybody, not only for people with disability, because we're talking how we can be welcoming for people with disability, but how can we welcome for everybody, people who don't have. I don't think there's a lot of work on that to allow people with low income to travel and things like that. There are organizations, tour operators. I gave an example yesterday. There is one that Elevate Destinations that does buy a trip, give a trip. If I buy a trip, it's not a cheap tour operator, but then they give a trip to a child in that region. They specifically work in like Southeast Asia. So something like that. But I don't think, I don't claim that I know what's going on in tourism in the US, everything. But I don't think I've seen much in terms of including people with low income to allow them to travel and things like that. As a matter of fact, I think it's going the other way, and I think that's international tourism really focusing on quality tourists, as they call it, people who spend a lot of money and maybe stay longer to avoid the over-tourism and overcrowding. So I would say no.
There's another question, and it's a sort of a taboo topic, but what do you think about sexual tourism that is accepted or tolerated in some countries? And for example, in Mexico, we have some destinations that are known for predators as a sexual tourism areas.
I don't approve.
Of course.
But it's inclusive.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I'm educated enough to talk on this topic, but I don't think there's a way to
Thanks a lot for your
be good anyway. I think there is an opportunity to find another alternative one. Also, but I know it's complicated.
It's a reality, right?
Yeah, in other places too. Thailand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for thoughtful questions. I'll move on for the sake of time. So I will share my study. So I did 30 tourism businesses, me and a couple of colleagues to visit the business and do what we call accessibility visit. And I put assessment in parentheses because when I say, oh, would you like to participate in accessibility assessment, people get scared. They think they get audited. So we frame it as visit. Visit and kind of informal. It is informal. I'm not auditing anybody, but in a way it is. So we develop an assessment instrument, which is it has a lot of different criteria where we ask questions related to mobility impairments. You know, we measure how wide the door is, what's the slope on the ramp, are there curbs and things like that. But then we also look at questions such as, is there music playing in the background? Which in most places it's nice to have some background music. But if you're hearing impairment, it's not nice because that takes away of you focusing on the person talking. You know, is there a quiet area where people with sensory kind of challenges can sit down and have a good experience? And do you have a hearing aid, hearing loop? I'll talk more about that. So we asked questions. We had an instrument where we went, measured, took notes, and then we also had a survey, and we asked the businesses in terms of what type of disabilities do you see, how often do you see, what are the most common, what are some challenges, how is the staff trained, etc., etc. And we visited a lot of different businesses, museums, restaurants, hotels, ziplining, casino, kind of everything that's somewhat tourism related. And then our phase 2, after we collected this information, and this is in Southern Oregon, only in the southern part of our state. And then phase 2, after we collected this information, we scheduled focus groups in the different regions and added kind of the business representatives, but also city officials, because somebody brought up, you have to include the municipality and this kind of higher level in the destination management organizations, because you can't really put that work on the business, right? And then we have phase 3. We just finished the focus groups like 2-3 weeks ago. We did the last focus group. And then phase 3 will host stakeholder meetings where everybody will be welcome. Residents, again, will share our work and collect more information. And then we'll develop some resources, is our phase 4. Materials for training, information, and things like that. So from our accessibility visits, some highlights. What were some of the challenges that businesses face? Infrastructure, talking about mobility is really, really challenging. And Ashton, and we visited a lot of different regions, but many of them are kind of older towns with historic streets, buildings, and things like that. It's very difficult to change the infrastructure. Awareness and knowledge is lacking. Most people say, oh, I've never thought about that. You know, it's like, oh, I don't know. I've never really read anything. I haven't done anything about it. Cost prohibitive. People who know about it, don't have the money to make any changes. And then, important back to your comment, little to no signage or accommodation for people who are sight or hearing impairment. Everybody seems to just think about the wheelchair, and that's it, right? But especially people with hearing impairments, really steep growth in the last few years. So this is a very big market group, if we want to say that. And then bathrooms. I'm adding separate features for bathrooms. This is one thing that is very, very much lacking. I mean, it's very challenging for outdoor outfitters where they have a porta potty. We have seen only one accessible porta potty. But even in hotels and restaurants, many cases the bathroom is really not accessible. And if anything, people should at least be able to go to the bathroom, right? Because what do you do if you want to go to a concert or you want to go to this whatever event and then you can't go to the bathroom? So that's what I tell the businesses: if you can do one thing, at least work on the bathroom to make sure that everybody can take care of their basic needs. In terms of staff disability training, it's really lacking. Everybody we interviewed says, oh, we talk about it in our general onboarding, but nobody really had specific training for teaching the spectrum of disabilities, how do you welcome people, etc. So it's back to like, oh, here it's so bad. I mean, it's everywhere. Nobody's really good at that. So we need to go beyond regular hospitality training. And then, but everybody is very interested. Yes, I would love to get materials, training in various formats, whether it will be one-day workshop or videos or on-page training material and things like that. Websites. I started talking about that. Websites are not accessible. So we did partner with some computer science students who developed a tool that used AI to scan the websites, and we developed this criteria that checks, does it have closed captioning, does it have alternative text on the image and things like that. And we have 20 or so criteria, and it scans it, and I mean, one website or two were kind of had something. Almost everybody had nothing. And again, this is one thing that is somewhat easier to do than have an elevator, something like that. But however, everybody is very excited about learning more and doing what they can, with the funds that they have. And then the second stage, the focus groups, the challenges that people talk about, and I know that's the main issue here, historic buildings, you can't really do anything if you have the money, right? We have to preserve that culture and history. Uneven sidewalks, cobbles, that's everywhere in Europe too, you can't do much about it. Outdoor spaces are extremely difficult, right? When we talk about zip lining and things like that, specifically for mobility reasons, very challenging. Limited transportation, we found the same challenges that everybody. Limited parking, accessible parking. In the casino we visited, they have very large parking lot, and I think they had like 25 or 30 accessible parking spots, and they are always full. Because older people like to go to the casino, and most of them have disabilities, so they had like 27 or something parking spots, and still not enough. They're always full. Lack of formal training on disability awareness, and they said, but we need to assess the needs, what is really needed, and then find the experts to provide. There aren't that many experts. I don't know if there's anybody here, but at least in Ashland, and I know that's the case in many places, there is you call your sped, you come in and teach. There is, not many experts that provide that training. Funding issues, lack of time, everybody's very busy, and then most importantly, lack of information. A lot of companies, kind of bigger companies that have the money, they still don't know what to do, where to start. And then in terms of best practices, what is already happening in our region. I'm not allowed to say names, so I'm trying to keep it general because we're keeping it confidential with businesses we visited with. Like one outdoor outfitter had an accessible golf cart available upon request, so you can go have their transportation from place to place. One museum, when they opened, they bought a wheelchair and they thought, oh, we thought we'll probably keep it in the closet there. But they found out that people request it all the time. You know, people who can walk just, you know, can get a little help. Visible signage about accessibility or inclusive atmosphere. A lot of businesses actually offer different adjustments and accommodations, but they don't communicate it well. So having the signage, you know, things in Braille or, you know, the ramp for wheelchairs that way, you know, around and things like that. Just the signage is missing, but a few of them have the signage. Sensory support event kit. One organization has, this is an example, I just pulled out this from Google. These are getting very popular for people with kind of sensory sensitivity. If you're going to a conference, you know, it might be overwhelming. If the light is too bright, you can have the glasses, earplugs if it's too loud. You know, this is kind of calming spray, fidget, and then material, and then this you can put on basically where you are. You know, I don't want to talk to everybody in terms of how you feel socially. So
I need that.
yeah, I think we all need to do that. So these, a lot of Google offers these. You can buy it from Google and a lot of companies, but you know, it's kind of simple things. You can just buy it from the store and put it together to have it available. Grants. A lot of tourism businesses have collaborated with other organizations for grants to get money to make some changes for accessibility. And then some museums, movie theaters, stores, etc. offer sensory-friendly days. You know, if you're, you know, especially for children, in the movie theater it's so loud, right? So they have sensory day where, you know, the volume is down, the lighting is different, or whatnot. So, back to the question involving municipalities and cities and higher level, having funding incentive is key. I mean, everybody wants to do things, it's the right thing to do, but you know, if there's no funding incentive, it's very difficult to motivate it to have this large scale. In terms of opportunities, what they identified in the focus groups, grant collaborations. So one business worked with a public health company, you know, more on the kind of medical field, but they partnered and got a larger grant. Working with school districts, I think that's my next slide. School districts, you know, again, there's a lot of children with sensory. They usually have an expert in the school who knows more about that. So working with them to have that expert knowledge shared, or working with assisted living facilities or retirement home. They have the knowledge to know how to work with people with disabilities, you know, on the older spectrum. So finding ways to collaborate and kind of share knowledge is another thing that people share. Sharing resources. One idea was that the city or somebody, there's these mobile ramps, buys one and you just borrow it when you need it. If you have a large group of senior citizens or something like that, you can borrow it. Maybe not everybody can buy it, but you can have the advanced sensory kit and other things that are available on request to share. Blog posts about accessibility, you know, talk about it. Maybe you don't have to say that you're perfect, but you're working towards it. And what small things you're doing, so have the conversation. Updating the website and implementing accessibility widgets, I'll talk about that in a minute. Again, this is something that's a little easier, it requires a little time, but having the information, what is my space like? What's the light like? What's the floor like? You know, things like that. And then awareness and advocacy for invisible silent disabilities. Again, we don't know much about those. We just think about the mobility. So we have an opportunity to learn more and maybe be welcoming at least for those people, not the mobility necessarily. A lot of organizations that we talked to, they said they'll make accessibility an agenda item, not something that we just talk once in a year, but you know, regularly thinking about what we can do. Data is key. One person said this providing the data, how many people are with disabilities, showing that there are big markets, spending a lot of money and all of that, that can help inform policy and you know, lead to change at the highest scale. Industry newsletter, I'm working with Travel Southern Oregon, our regional destination management organization. They're developing industry newsletter, which they have the letter, they'll start adding information on accessibility to inform the businesses and add kind of information. One organization said that they'll start doing lunch and learn once a month, where they invite an expert for 1 hour while they're eating lunch and kind of teach about the different disabilities and what to do about it. Trainings on accessibility, and then in tourism kind of field, build an itinerary around accessible businesses. So if there are, you know, a couple that are accessible, maybe build an itinerary around that. And I think my favorite one is having, kind of from a marketing perspective, 10 places to visit, you know, maybe not in Guanajuato, maybe in a broader region in a wheelchair, or 3 places to visit if you're hearing impairment or something like that. So you don't have to have everybody on board, but maybe there's a couple that do good work. So I'll pause here.
I'm dying to make a reflection because I'm learning a lot here. It's clear to me that this kind of challenge has to be a system between the hotels, restaurants, the municipality, the transportation companies, the university, etc. But something that is in life always a problem is money, cost. So when you two were talking about sight and hearing impaired, the first question for that people is going to be, okay, how many people is there? Am I going to make put a lot of budget to adjust my hotel or whatever, and I'm going to have 1 or 2 customers per year? So I'm just saying that's a big challenge also, to have numbers. You were talking about data. And like, for example, I'm thinking in Guanajuato and say, how many people sight impaired will be visiting Guanajuato, and we will have spaces for that people. It has to be cost effective because restaurants, hotels, and tourist attractions need to make a living. So I just wanted to say.
It is challenging because it's kind of like, which should come first, right? So should I offer it and wait for people to come? But then if you don't offer it, then people probably won't come. But if you offer it first and you market it, you know, this hotel is really trying to be hearing impaired friendly. Then once you start marketing it, we have to have it first, then maybe more people will come. But, you know, maybe not. Yeah, you have to do the data. Yeah.
I was going to ask basically the same thing than Martin, because business is business, and data is key, you just said. So I'm just curious if you've seen some survey or some analysis about how do they get some financial return from all this investment. Would it be through tax reductions from all this investment? Does it have something? Would it be because, as a matter of fact, there is evidence that there are an increased amount of this kind of tourists that are providing an increase in their utility and their revenue that is worthwhile? Or because it's part of their social marketing survey, and it's because it's not necessarily, it's just because the non-disabled people would be more attracted to these places because they are inclusive. You know, it's like when we talk about inclusive business, gay-friendly business, a lot of these companies would develop these kind of strategies, not necessarily to attract more gay-friendly people, but just to show to the heterosexual segment that they are very socially sensitive about this community. So, have you seen some publication about that?
Yeah, there is data showing that yes, I mean the number of people with disabilities is growing. They travel, and they have money, and then a very important kind of from a business standpoint, if let's say my child is in a wheelchair, well, guess what? The whole family is going to that place. So there is a multiplier effect. People with disabilities, whether it's wheelchair, hearing, visual, typically travel in groups of 2 or 3 minimum. And it's a family, 4 or 5 people. So there's the multiplier effect. And again, they have to do the research a lot more than us. I'm like, okay, I'll look at hotels, whatever, I'll do something. But people have to see, okay, is that really good for me and then the whole family. So there are studies showing that it does make business sense. Of course, not in every destination, but I think a lot of destinations like Florida is considered kind of a leader. They are really targeting people with disabilities. People with disabilities, they are advertising, and they have done a lot of work. So these kind of destinations are growing, they become popular and trendy among the people with disabilities. So I think there's a big opportunity. I think there was a question here.
No, but more than a question is a comment in the sense that, yeah, it's costly, but many times we have to at some moment change something, and it's going to cost. So to make it actually then friendly, it doesn't cost much more than that. So it's just having an agenda, thinking about it, and in the sense that when I have to do a remodelation, just take that into account. And actually the real cost is going to be just very, very slight amount with respect to the cost of the total remodelation. The question is to be aware enough of that, to include it in your planification, to put it on there. Because for example, in towns, you go many places in Europe and you will see that there's a big street to walk, and in the middle of that, actually you see that there are 4 lines. Yeah? And then they cross at some point, and there's dots instead of lines. That actually is for visually impaired people, so they can find their way. That doesn't cost at all. Once taken into account that you have to change the floor, then putting like that is not an increase in the cost.
Right.
Really.
Just thinking about
Just
it.
thinking about it and making the modification you need to make in a way that actually you are taking into account those people. And then many of those things that she was saying actually is profitable for everyone. So for example, here in Guanajuato, having an elevator in a hotel is a very good idea for everyone. The question is that, of course, you are doing it for everybody, not just for the mobility there. The question is, when you do the reform, take into account other things. Now, if you check an elevator, you see it's in Braille, and it's coming like that out from factory.
Right.
And it doesn't cost anything more or extra to have it in Braille, because I mean, they already are making the stuff right and say, we put that, it doesn't cost too much, the elevator is not going to be more costly. But for example here, how many restaurants do you have a menu in Braille? You think it's expensive? No, it's not.
Or simple, and I'll talk about that. It doesn't even have to be Braille, just larger print. Because people don't want to read the small one. I mean, you can use your phone, but simple as that, just print it larger will helpful for many people.
And
yeah, I know they
the question is to have it as a long-term plan.
Exactly.
And not just thinking that I need to do something right now that is actually going to be long.
And that's what I ask, progress over perfection. You start small, you can change overnight, but start thinking and making small changes.
Okay, I have actually 2 questions and a personal commentary, but questions from Dr. Arias. Do you know if in the US it's mandatory to have adaptations to support the access of people with disabilities to like tourist installation? Isn't something mandatory by law or like encouraged?
It is. I mean, specifically for mobility impairments, the door should be 32 inches wide to accommodate. However, one of my colleagues who I do this work with is in a wheelchair. And when I go with her, it is 32 inches we measure it. But guess what? She has an electric chair, so by the time you add your hands, it's too tight. So the law says it has to be 32. However, really accessible, friendly is 36.
Yeah.
With the bathroom, they say how much space maneuvering you have and things like that. But what we saw is, I don't know, they put a little, they do have a space if you measure, but they put a little cabinet here or something like that. In a bar, what we saw, you have to have a lower area for wheelchair. Well, we saw 2 restaurants where they did have that lower area, and the cashier was right there. Or in another bar, they used it for marketing materials, for sure. So they check the box, but it's not really functional.
Okay, and the other is saying that currently he's researching about the laws around the tourism in Mexico as a way to include people and not discriminate against them. What do you think about gender-based tourism?
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult, and it's related to accessibility in terms of like the bathrooms, for example, having a separate bathroom without gender, right? So it's a separate room, right? Not male and female. So yes, there are again, that relates to your comment that a lot of places do not have that, but the new building, when it's built, the bathrooms are separate, so you can be for everybody. So there are policies like that, but it's a slow movement.
And on my commentary, I currently live with a chronic illness and I have food restrictions. In Guanajuato, it's impossible to eat outside with food restrictions. I can't eat gluten. And when I went to a restaurant that used to have a gluten-free menu or gluten-friendly menu, and I said, there's no gluten-free food, they were like, oh, gluten, everything has gluten, it's just good gluten and bad gluten. I was like, no, we don't have a policy in Mexico, federal-wise, about allergens in food and everything. So I think I never thought about it starting in a tourism point of view, saying all the menus have to have allergens. You need to make sure there's no cross-contamination.
Yes.
And it's very frustrating, honestly.
Yeah, and that's something simpler to change. At least offer one meal that's gluten-free or vegan or whatever, with different, dairy-free and things like that. Yeah, and I have the best practices. Just for the sake of time, I know we're running out of time again. So these are just things that I have seen from the literature and other examples, some best practices. Obviously, no curbs. A lot of things we have seen, there is a great ramp, and then at the end there's a big curb. So again, they check off the box, we have the ramp, it's the right dimension, but it's not really functional. Railings and lever handles, so the doors, in the older buildings there's the ball on the door, that's not friendly. It has to be a lever so you can open it with one hand. Railings, in most bathrooms they do have railings that are horizontal, but my colleague who's in a wheelchair, she said it's much more helpful if they're vertical, so you can kind of pull yourself up. In most places they have horizontal. Again, they check off the regulation box, but it's not the best if you really want it. Table, counter, hideout. I'll go quickly here. For visually impaired, tactile maps. So have a map that explain in Braille, or for example in MoMA in New York, they have please touch the art. So people who are blind can kind of feel what it is. Obviously you can touch it, but they are made replicas. For visually colorblind, there's colorblind glasses. That doesn't cost that much. You can have a pair there. Specifically at some viewpoint, maybe here at the top of Pipila. Yeah, maybe there can be, this view, it's all about color, right? So maybe there can be a pair that maybe not too many people, but it's available. In terms of hard of hearing loop is becoming more popular in the US. I don't know if it's here. The way it works is people with hearing devices, they can change the channel, and then they, I'm wearing kind of like a lanyard or something, and they can kind of hear me primarily. If it's a front desk or some busy environment event, it doesn't stop the other, but it's more muffled, so it focuses the hearing for only the main person. It's not super expensive, but it costs money. In terms of invisible disabilities, the sunflower is the internationally recognized symbol for invisible disabilities. If you have an allergy that is considered invisible disability, or you have autism or other things. So in conferences I have seen where they hand those, if you want to be recognized, wear one, and then if you know how to help these people, there is a white sunflower to wear. I've seen flight attendants on flight wear it to kind of know, hey, if you have contact me, I know I can help you. For website, again, this is the easier one to do. Information, information, information. Having an accessibility statement, what does that mean? Back to the question, being inclusive. Just say, hey, we're trying to be inclusive, welcoming to everybody. We are working on becoming more accessible, or something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then related to that, have an accessibility tab on your website. Information, Again, you don't have to say you're accessible, but provide information what it's like. What's the floor, what's the space, what's the lighting, etc. And how far is it? In all my visits and the websites of the 30 businesses, I think one of them had Q&A, like 16 pages in, and then another one had somewhat, but nobody had, with the main tabs. Website language, it's a little easier with technology. You can change it these days. Alternative text on images and closed captions for videos, and then simple language. So this is a brewery in Ashland. Maybe you've been there. So here, they have an accessibility widget. So if you click on this little person, it's made to open, so you can adjust the website. Contrast, bigger text, simplify it, and things like that, based on dyslexia and things like that. So it simplifies it to very simple if you use a reader and things like that. So there are different tools like that. Then staff training. There are free resources online to train staff to become welcoming. Obviously, staff speaking multiple languages is important. I looked it up, the Mexican Sign Language, LSM, and then translations in different languages help it, although, it depends. I think part of the tourist experience is to get lost and figure out the language, right? And then information on common algorithms. That's so simple to add. It doesn't cost much than, 1 hour of somebody's time. A couple resources I'm running up here. This website, 21 Senses, it's more based on the east coast of the US, but they provide a directory of businesses that offer sensory hours. Like, for example, Walmart has sensory hours, so people can go shop outside of hours, so it's not so overwhelming. Or movie theaters, Chuck E. Cheese, I don't know if you know, that's kind of a place for kids to play, very overwhelming. They have sensory hours, so kids with autism can go and enjoy that without being overwhelmed. So more of these, I think, are coming up. So wrapping up here, transportation, accessible taxis and shuttles and things like that. For accessible hotels, roll-in showers, not walk in, so that little lip can get a deal breaker for somebody, handheld shower, talk about grab bar, spaciousness. And what we saw, some accessible room, it's a beautiful room, there's all the regulations are checked, but then they put a coffee table where a wheelchair is supposed to go, because often those rooms are used by other people. And desk for wheelchair, when we visited, my colleague was not able to sit on the desk. All people in wheelchairs also need to do some work, and that has not been thought of. Clearance underneath the bed for Hoyer lift. This is a device that moves people from a wheelchair to bed who are totally cannot move. And then accessible room with 2 beds are pretty much unavailable. Well, if people usually travel with a companion who's not necessarily their spouse or family member, they don't want to share a bed. So having 2 beds is very important. So beach wheelchairs, there's hot air balloon, zip lining, there's adaptive skiing, adaptive everything available. It takes a little more time. Winery in California has sensory gardens where you can really listen to the birds, focus on the smell. There's a place where they have a stream where you can take off your shoes and walk on the water and things like that for the sensory neurodivergent customers. So back to your comment, progress over perfection. Start small, just start having a conversation is something that we can all do. Staff training, inclusive marketing, talk with somebody, and again, in the destination management organizations I talk to, they're like, oh, we're scared, we don't want to talk with the disabled rider. They'll say how bad we are, right? But again, shows the transparent, being transparent, you know, what is like first-hand perspective. And most importantly, and the easiest, provide information on the website. You know, people with disabilities should not have to scroll and call and all of that. So a couple of resources. Kurt Lee is a blogger who travels. He had traveled to all 7 continents in a wheelchair, and then there's a couple others, and I shared those slides with Martin, who will share it with everybody. This, if you are looking for information, Visit England. If you just search Visit England Accessible and Inclusive Tourism Toolkit, this is the most comprehensive resource I've seen. It's about 80-page document, and they talk about website, and training, and everything. And lastly, Wheel the World. I don't know if you're familiar with this organization. It is kind of like Expedia, Priceline, Booking.com, but they provide all that lacking information. So if you're looking for a hotel, when you look here, you will see all the detailed information. What's the bed like? What's the chair like? What's, again, mainly mobility impairment. And interestingly, the 2 owners who started this a couple years ago are from Mexico. Alvaro Silverstein, I think he studied at Berkeley or something like that in California, but he's Mexican, and he's foreigner. So this, I just have a 1-minute video and I'm done.
If you want,
You need to switch
we
the
can talk about what led us to use wheels instead of legs.
What do I do?
Duplicar pantalla.
Ajá. En el
The display settings.
Creo que Martín puede YouTube.
There you go.
Claro, gracias.
I can tell you the SaaS version and version 2.0, which is
I just think it's an inspirational video. I don't work directly with them. I'm not paid by
will
them.
embellish everything with a tearful story of effort and determination. But there's something we have to tell you.
This
We're
is
not
Alvaro.
superheroes.
No,
We didn't feel like them when we climbed to over 2,450 meters of altitude. One of the most beautiful and incredible places in the world. Unlike superheroes, we thought the same thing anyone would. We felt grateful to be there because it made us understand several things. But before we start to tell you, could you please change the music? Because there in Machu Picchu, we realized that despite everything, this is not a cheap imitation of life. This is not a copy or a simulation. This is not a lake that longs with all its heart to be the sea. This, my friends, is life. Life at its fullest. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. We're saying this for every tear shed, for every person high. In flickering neon lights with fireworks lighting up the sky. Life. Pack your bags, recover the ability to wonder. Open your heart and let it explore. But even then, you won't be prepared for this, because we are not inviting you to travel. We are inviting you to live.
Okay, so Will the World is. I don't have any notes.
You want to go back?
I was just going.
Yeah, configure. Yeah, that's the one.
Wait, that one.
No,
It's okay, it's my last slide.
There you go.
No, it's good.
Yeah, next one.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so next on my research is kind of hosting the stakeholder meeting, developing a guide and training, and thank you so much for your attention and for the great questions. If you have any other questions, I'm available.
Any last question?
Well, I'm experience both in undergraduate and graduate programs.
Yeah.
I've seen recently for the last 5-6 years they're getting so insensitive about these kind of issues. So I was are there some clear jobs opportunities for this segment of business?
I think opportunities will open up. Yeah, because as I said, all the businesses I talk to, they're like, yeah, I want expertise, I want that information, and it's not easily available. They're like, oh, do you know where I can hire an expert to teach my stuff? No, I don't know. There's nobody available. So I think there will be job opportunities.
Because this video you showed, it's like some non-profit organization who are like
they are for profit, but
food profit.
they are working to make travel accessible for everybody.
It's like I don't know. I'm just it's like an Airbnb platform, but just focused for.
No, like hotels and other activities sign a contract with them and they get on their website. So it is for people with disabilities, specifically mobility, but they have a little bit on hearing and visual. So if you're in a wheelchair, you go on their website and you book a hotel or other activities through them, and they're kind of.
It's like a specialized booking.
Yes, exactly.
It's a TripAdvisor for impaired people.
Okay.
Yeah, booking platform for accessible.
So, Dr.
So Dr. Arias would like to thank you for answering all his difficult questions
Yeah.
and thanking you for your presentation, because he says he can see himself where his research needs to go towards like the law making and all this context for more inclusive tourism. So he'd like to thank you for your exposition.
Thank you. Please feel free to reach out if you. I left my business cards. Oh, are they here?
No.
No. I have my business cards, and I also have some resources for SOU. You probably don't need this, but in the back there's
Okay, because of the time, we have to thank Dr. McGrady for coming to Guanajuato, and I just want to mention that Southern Oregon University was very kind to support this visit. Okay, so we want to, at least on behalf of University of Guanajuato, say thank you to President Bailey and the head of the division, Lisa Smith, for hosting you and sending you here. And on behalf of the University of Guanajuato, we want to give you constancia, which is a certificate of appreciation for lecturing today on accessible tourism. So thank you very much for this presentation.
Are you present?
And now we have a present for Dr.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.